That is Jordan Hayes. She is an 8th grader at Drew Charter School who is with us today to learn about government and see how we operate in some budget. And at some point, I believe she's going to be sitting up here replacing at least one of us. We don't know who, so y'all watch out. But Jordan, thank you for coming and being with us today. At this time, we will go ahead and I will turn it over to our city manager to introduce our HR session of budget.
Yes, it is the most wonderful time of the year. So good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Today is the first of many budget work sessions where we will walk through the development of the FY24 budget. For some of our newer council members, this is an opportunity for you all to get a bird's eye view of all of the things, all of the conversations, all of the decision-making points that go into play and into consideration as we bring forward a balanced budget to you in May. So today we'll kick off the first work session. We have Sadia Sattar, who is our Budget and Management Services Director, who will be producing the first presentation.
All right, well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Branch and members of City Council, City Manager, and City Clerk. I'm Sadia Sattar. I'm the Director of Budget and Management Services. Later, you will also hear from Assistant City Manager Nikki Hill and Interim HR Director Susan Steed on the city's compensation and benefits plan for fiscal year 2024. And then I'll see you all again after that to talk about ARPA funds. But today, I will share with you all an overview of revenues and expenses for fiscal year 2024. Our goal is to share where we are in the process and provide an update on projected revenues and expenses for the upcoming fiscal year. Our presentation today will focus on the general fund only. Enterprise funds, to include Raleigh Water, Solid Waste Services, and Stormwater Services, will be discussed during the March work session. An update on the city's CIP will also be shared in April. As a reminder, we wanted to share with you all where we are in the budget process. Currently, we are still collecting responses for the Budget Community Priority Survey, which wraps up at the end of this month. We've also wrapped up the city's first pilot of budget community engagement sessions, where we held two virtual and 2 in-person focus groups. We are also currently reviewing what departments have submitted and are early in the process to ascertain what revenues and expenses are going to be for fiscal year 2024. Before we dive into our projections, we wanted to remind you what the city's current general fund budget is comprised of. As a reminder, the city's budget is a combination of base budget, mandated increases, and policy decisions. The fiscal year 2023 general fund adopted budget comprised of $590.4 million in revenues and expenses, supporting 3,045 full-time employees, providing residents with a variety of city services. So let's dive into our projections for fiscal year 2024. The Budget Office works closely with Finance to evaluate revenue trends and determines preliminary revenue growth. The city's revenues comprise of taxes, user fees, and other revenues to include grants and state and county revenues. Sales and property taxes continue to be the main drivers of general fund revenues, and the city continues to monitor sales tax growth, which continues to outpace expectations due to inflation driving up the prices of goods and services. Finance also continues to monitor vehicle tax and tag revenues, a key revenue source for the city, as the sales of new and used vehicles appears to be slowing down. Development user fees continue to rise, and while parks, recreation, and cultural resources fees continue to increase, they have yet to reach pre-pandemic levels. As we prepare for the next fiscal year, our base budget for fiscal year 2024, and I'm talking about the base general fund budget for fiscal year 2024, comprises of our fiscal year 2023 base of $590.4 million minus any one-time costs. It also includes fiscal year 2023 adopted FTE, including any mid-year additions that have happened this fiscal year. Also included is full-year funding for permanent part-time positions in the city, as well as merit increases for broadband, general open range, and public safety employees. Vehicle maintenance and operations costs are also included in the base, as well as increases to fuel costs and vehicle purchases. Also included is a general fund transfer to debt service. Mandated increases in the fiscal year 2024 expense budget include the city's contribution to maintain a competitive benefits package. This contains contributions to retirement for local government employees' retirement system, or LGERS. Also includes retirement for LEOs, or law enforcement officials, as well as other post-employment benefits, or OPEB, for employees. Also included in mandated increases are health insurance premiums, housing bond operating impacts, and security for all city-owned buildings. Finally, we also have a lot of policy decisions being evaluated based on available resources. Our main priority remains the creation of a budget representing the preferences and priorities of our residents. Our goal remains to present a balanced budget on May 16th of this year. To balance this budget, the city can take several actions to include revenue increases to keep pace with rising costs, compensation and benefit adjustments for staff, and the enhancement, maintenance, or reduction of city services. So what does the 5-year projection for the city's budget look like? At the moment, we foresee a gap for fiscal year 2024. We anticipate the gap to be between $500,000 to $6.4 million for the upcoming fiscal year, with the gap continuing to increase in out years, expanding to $36.2 million in fiscal year 2028. So on the revenue side, the small growth figure of 1% is largely driven by $5 million in ARPA funding being removed, as well as the removal of other one-time revenues. We do anticipate growth in revenues to change. I just wanted to remind Council that this 1% revenue growth is a preliminary number, since Finance continues to monitor sales tax and closely watches nationwide trends in the economy for the upcoming months. On the expense side, our base growth is increasing by 3.1%, the main drivers being personnel and benefit increases. Also, on the expense side, budgeting for retirement, fuel increases, and other operational expenses, including interfund expenditures, continue to drive growth. As we come to the conclusion of this presentation, we want to remind you that staff will continue to monitor current fiscal year activity. We have 2 upcoming budget work sessions on March 13th and April 10th, and we look forward to presenting a manager's recommended budget on the 16th of May. We also will commence City Council weekly work sessions in June of this year, with a public hearing scheduled for June 3rd. As a reminder, here are the proposed budget work session topics. On Monday, March 13th, staff from Raleigh Water, Solid Waste Services, Stormwater Management, as well as Planning and Developmental Services, who will be speaking about their fees, will be present in council chambers. Budget will be back to speak to you all about the fiscal year 2024 budget community engagement process. On April 10th is our next work session, which will talk about the fiscal year 24 to 28 Capital Improvement Program, or CIP. We'll also be speaking to you all about the city's grants and provide any updates to the city's user fees, as well as any HR updates. And with that, I am going to stop talking and ask you all if you have any questions. Councilmember Black?
On slide, I don't know what slide, it says the general fund operating budget. What is meant by gap?
So our gap is defined by, obviously we expect our revenues to increase. Let me actually go back to that slide, that might be better. So here we go. So obviously we want to produce our balanced budget. And if you remember from council retreat, we call balanced budget where our revenues meet our expenses. If you see at the bottom of this slide, you'll see that our expenses are growing at 3.1% and our revenues are only growing at 1%. Keen reminder that this is a preliminary number. This is where that gap is, where we don't have enough revenues to cover our expenses, so at the moment we are off balance. Yes. Did that answer your question? Great.
Following up on that, it's a pretty wide range, $500,000 to $6 million. What are the factors that will determine whether we end up closer to the $500,000 or to the $6 million?
That's a great question. So at the moment, these are all preliminary numbers. I'm going to just keep saying that so that you all know that this is just an overview. We'll come up with really strong numbers on May 16th, knock on wood, when we present a balanced budget. So this gap comprises of a variety of items that are currently not in our base. So this includes funding for, let's say, a disparity study. Should council decide to increase any or provide any further merit increases to staff other than what is currently in the base, that gap reflects that as well. So our job is to ensure that the city manager, as we go into budget season, knows exactly what we can expect. So we try to be transparent and say, you know, this is kind of where we are right now, and unfortunately our revenues are not covering our expenses.
Any other questions from any councilors? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so as Sadia concludes her report, we will have Susan Steed, our interim HR director / assistant HR director, here to talk about some of our HR considerations that are being considered right now for the development of FY24, followed by Nikki Hill, assistant city manager.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. I left in your chairs a copy of the glossary of compensation and benefits terms, which may be helpful to you as we walk through our compensation and benefits overview this afternoon. So thank you for the opportunity to be here this afternoon. I'm pleased to talk about our compensation and benefits program along with Nikki Hill, our assistant city manager. With us this afternoon are a few staff members to help answer questions if we need them. We have our benefits manager, Catherine Franklin, our compensation manager, Urshad Patel, and our lead wellness analyst, Jackie Brown, with us today. So as we walk through the compensation and benefits program, I want to mention how valuable this program is to our employees. We have a real commitment to make sure that we provide a compensation and benefits program that is robust enough for employees to enjoy a quality work life. And so we'll talk a little bit about our total rewards as we go through this today. As you're thinking about the budget for FY24, it is a significant impact to our budget. Our benefits and compensation take up about 27% of the budget, just a little over $309 million. So it is a pretty big impact. So our agenda today, we're going to talk about total rewards. This is what the city gives to employees in exchange for the service and the work that they perform. We'll also talk about employee compensation. We'll look at our pay plans overview. We'll talk about a few proposals that we are planning to bring back in April. We also will talk about some current and future compensation analyses that we're doing. And then we'll move into employee health benefits and talk about our plan for a multi-year benefits and wellness strategy, and then next steps of what you can expect from us after today. So we'll start with total rewards, and again, that's what employees get in exchange for the work that they do for the city. So when you look at total rewards, it's pretty robust in what we offer as a package. We have a compensation package that typically includes our base salary and any other types of incentives that we offer. Our benefits normally includes retirement, medical benefits such as medical, dental, life, and vision. Our voluntary benefits, a few examples are critical illness, short-term disability, and critical accident. And then we also include leaves within our benefits package, so vacation, sick, holiday, and a variety of some other leaves that we offer. Also in our total rewards, we want to make sure that it includes work-life balance for employees. So we have wellness programs or initiatives. We also offer an employee assistance program. And then finally, to make up that total rewards, we want to make sure we offer opportunities for growth and development for our employees. So that includes some of our training programs, tuition assistance, career opportunities. What we're going to cover today are two components of the total rewards, and that's compensation and benefits. So when we think about compensation and benefits, we talk about that as a total compensation plan. And we've shared a few examples here on a chart so you can see what total compensation looks like for an employee. I'll walk through just the first example, which is for a police officer with the city. And we're looking at a midpoint of their position, which is around $64,000 a year. Into that, we add retirement and FICA contributions, which adds $21,000. Other benefits such as holiday, vacation, overtime is another $21,000. And then when you include health insurance, we're assuming an employee with a medical plan B and with family coverage, and that they have dental and life insurance. That's an additional $32,000. So the total compensation plan for this police officer is $138,000. So you can see the value that they're getting. There are three other examples on the chart, but I'll just leave those to you to look at quickly. So we're going to break it down. We said total compensation is benefits and compensation. Now I'm going to talk just about compensation in the next few slides. We first start with our pay plan. Or pay plans, I should say. We have three pay plans. We have a police and fire pay structure, which is an open range, and that includes sworn police officers up through deputy chief, and it also includes fire positions up through assistant fire chief. Our starting pay for a police officer currently is $50,301. Starting pay for fire recruits is $46,540. And if a police officer or a fire recruit work their way up through the ranks and they become a deputy chief, the salary range maxes out at $162,597. So you can see there's lots of opportunity for growth in between that. Our general pay structure is the next pay plan. This includes employees in our skilled trade, skilled labor, and administrative positions. We have about 2,000 employees in this pay plan, and their lowest salary starts at $37,850, which matches our current living wage for 2023. And we'll be talking about the living wage in just a few minutes. And then finally, we have a broadband pay structure. This includes technical positions, supervisory, managerial, and executive positions. And we have about 1,000 employees in this pay plan. This one is exactly what it says. Broadband means it's a broad range of salaries, so the span is wide, and that's to allow to reduce the need for job reclassifications, and it offers long-term salary potential for employees in that range. It also gives managers the flexibility to hire employees in the broadband at minimum if they have minimal experience, or they can hire at a higher rate if they have experience that they're bringing to the position. We wanted to share with you a little bit about what we've done this year in workforce investments. And I say a little bit lightly because we've done a lot. As you can see, we have spent over $31 million this year in efforts to retain employees and reward them for the work that they do. So this is a snapshot that shows you in the left-hand column all employees of what they've received. I'll just name a few of these. We did do a 2% cost of living adjustment in April of this year. We also provided merit increases between 3 to 5% for general pay structure and police. And then we also provided 1 to 5% merit increases for broadband employees. We also updated our temporary pay plan to increase the minimum of the pay. This is for part-time temporaries and part-time employees from $8.25 to $11 an hour. And then we also did some adjustments for equity for employees in our maintenance and operations divisions across several departments. And then finally, in November, as a retention effort, we paid out employee bonuses to all employees at $7.3 million. And then we continued our longevity pay plan, which rewards employees who started with the city before 2011. It was $2.94 million that was paid out in longevity. $1.9 million of that was for public safety positions. And then finally, on our right-hand column, we made additional adjustments or pay for public safety, which includes police, fire, and emergency communications. We increased the minimums of the range for police and fire. We also included merits for them. We did some targeted pay equity adjustments to address compression and leapfrogging. And then we also implemented some bonuses, such as a sign-on bonus for employees being hired, an employee referral bonus, and rehire bonuses. And then we also did a market adjustment for emergency communications this year. Looking across both columns, you can see that we had a commitment to equity and doing some market adjustments for solid waste, utilities, transportation, parks and rec, Raleigh Convention Center, and then police, fire, and emergency communications. So I'm going to move into proposals for FY24. The first proposal that we have is that we would like to change our supplemental retirement plan contributions. We would like to move, and this is our 457 plan, we would like to move from a matching process, which currently has a contribution rate of 3% from the city if the employee contributes 1.5%. We would like to eliminate the match and move to a flat contribution rate. The flat contribution rate would be for all employees, regardless of whether they contribute anything or not, and we're proposing that we contribute as a city 3%. It does exclude law enforcement officers because they are receiving a statutory contribution from the city of 5% toward their 401k. So we believe that this will really benefit our employees in enhancing their total reward package. It also gives them potential to save more for retirement, and it aligns with best practices of our peers. We've included an example in this chart below that you can see that this really impacts our employees that are in lower paid categories. So those who are making less than $55,000 a year, this will impact 353 employees. So that's 57% of them that will be impacted if we are able to make a 3% contribution match. The next proposal we have is the living wage proposal. The living wage was adopted in January 2017 by council, and we make adjustments every year. And it is based on the universal living wage that is established by HUD. It was established with a standard that no more than 30% of a person's gross income should be spent on housing. So it's designed to show the minimum salary for a full-time worker, what they would need to earn, need to be paid in order to afford the fair market rent for a one-bedroom apartment. So the formula that we've used as a city is to calculate based on annual salary, not the hourly rate. It uses a 4-year average of the fair market rent for a 1-bedroom apartment, and it also recognizes health insurance premiums are provided by the city. And so then it sets the annual earnings minimum for the city's pay structure. In FY24, you can see a bit of a jump. It will move from $37,850 as a minimum to $40,860 in FY24. Currently, our lowest salary in the city is $37,850, which is matching this year's living wage, and it was established in September of 2022. The living wage is typically, the adjustments are typically paid out during the annual merit increase payout, which occurs in the fall of the year, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes as well. So currently, just to give you kind of a status of where we are with the living wage, we have 4 pay ranges in our general pay plan that are below the new living wage. So we will have to raise the pay ranges to the new living wage in FY24. Some examples of those that are below the living wage are customer service representatives, maintenance technicians, office assistants, recreation assistants, transportation and utilities workers. So again, we'll do that at the same time as merit. And then finally, our next proposal is the FY24. Yes, sir.
1 second. You have a question?
Yes,
Can you go
ma'am.
back to that previous slide really quickly?
sure
I just have a
can.
clarifying question. So for fiscal year 2024, the base or the living wage salary is $40,000, and you said you don't want people to spend over 30% on housing. So 30% of that is going to be $12,000, right?
If I do the math, you're probably quicker at it than I am.
So if it's $12,000, we're saying spending on housing in a year. So that's like $1,000 a month. Where do they live?
Right. And a 2-bedroom apartment right now, or a 1-bedroom apartment right now, the average cost that they established is $1,200 a month.
So our living wage doesn't cover that.
So we can look at that to make sure that it
Okay.
does.
I just wanted to make sure the math was. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, moving into our merit increase proposal for FY24. This chart shows what we did in FY23. So for employees in general pay plan and police and fire, if they were at or below the midpoint of the salary range, they received a 5% increase, and then a 3% increase if they're above the midpoint of the salary range. Broadband pay increases were between 1% to 5%. And then we also had a 1% lump sum increase for permanent part-time and temporary employees, as well as probationary employees. Their merit increases are based on annual performance evaluations. Those annual performance evaluations are done between June and August each year. And then the payout is typically in October of that same year. In this year, in FY23, we did pay out early for police, fire, and emergency communications. We are proposing this year that we have the same timeline for all employees to include police, fire, and emergency communications. And what we are proposing, I mentioned that this was what we did in 23. We're proposing that we do the same in 2024 with the same merits. So those are the proposals we have right now. We are also working on some current compensation analyses so we can determine what we will propose in terms of those analysis, the analysis work that we're doing. So I'm going to share a few of these with you. We have the same timeline for all of those. We have been collecting data in January and February. We're ready to start analyzing the data that we've collected from peer cities. And then in April, we will come back to you with results and proposal for FY24. So the first analysis is an analysis that we do every year. This is the annual market analysis. Typically, we survey 1/3 of our positions within the city. We've gone a little bit further this year. We are surveying 42% of our positions. We've added some positions in Convention Center and the Performing Arts Center to our general employee survey. The criteria that we use to do our survey is that we look at positions that were not part of the 21 and 22 annual market survey because they were not previously surveyed. We look at representation in each job family that we have, and then we also look at some of the positions that are experiencing retention issues. We've had a very good response so far to the survey. Most all peer cities have responded. And with that, I'll move into the executive pay analysis, which is our next analysis. We have not done one of these for a while, and we have noticed some challenges that we're having with executive pay. We believe there may be some misalignment of job classifications, so we want to look and see what our peer cities are doing with job classifications and titles to make sure that we are appropriately classifying those positions. We also have experienced some significant turnover in the 22 calendar year for executive positions. Executive positions include assistant directors of departments, they include senior office managers, directors, and our appointed positions and our city manager positions. So the turnover can be attributed to some retirements that we've had. It also can be attributed to resignations for other jobs, some growth opportunities, and a few have been for relocations or family personal matters. We have noticed a decline in the number of qualified applicants for executive positions. We do still have qualified applicants, it's just the number of those applications have declined. We also have seen an increase in candidates declining offers for executive positions. They have other choices out there. They're often interviewing for more than one position, and they'll take the choice that they feel is the best for them. So you can see that we have these challenges. We're hoping that the executive pay analysis will give us some good information that we can analyze and then make some proposal for any adjustments for FY24. We are also looking at public safety pay and classifications. We have a two-pronged approach that we're looking at. Our first approach is a very recent or near approach that we'll use. We still have some legacy issues of leapfrogging and compression that we want to look at. Leapfrogging, you probably know what that is. It's in your glossary of terms, but it's very simple. It really is leapfrogging. It's a junior employee that leaps over a senior employee in pay and in the same job title. So we did a 2017 compensation study with some implementation of the recommendations, but it did not clean up all of our legacy issues. We have had changes in the minimum pay rate range for fire captains and police sergeants for 3 consecutive years. But we have not adjusted the ranges above those. We've had a practice of changing pay only for employees whose pay falls below the minimum. And then we have had some updated promotions that have leapfrogged over the others that we need to look at as well. We are doing a collaborative work session in early March. It'll be I think March 1 or 2nd next week. We will be meeting with command staff of all 3 departments, police, fire, and emergency communications. At that time, we will share what we've discovered from HR in the legacy or leapfrogging issues. We will ask them to to share their feedback with us. If they've seen any other leapfrogging issues that we might have missed, they know more about the tenure of their employees and the experiences that they've had that they can share with us. Once we reach consensus with that, then we will come back in April with some recommendations for any adjustments. And then the second piece of our two-pronged approach is a long-term approach. We are establishing a public safety collaborative. We're excited to revitalize what we used to call the Employee Advisory Group. It is now called the Employee Experience Group. This will be a collaboration with the City Manager's Office, Human Resources, and the Public Safety Departments. There will be diverse representation from each department on this collaborative, and they'll be able to examine, make recommendations on public safety workforce challenges that will also include looking at recruitment and retention for those departments. And then our last piece that we're looking at is we would like to do a comprehensive compensation analysis for the entire city. Our goal with this is to ensure that we have compensation and career opportunities that align with other organizations, and that we are in a position to improve recruitment, retention, and the quality of work life for our employees. This compensation study will also include a look at developing career ladders for employees so they can see their growth potential of moving from one step to the next. We plan to hire an experienced compensation consultant for this study. We estimate an expense of $200,000 for the study, phased over 2 years. It is for the study, not for the implementation. We anticipate the timeline to start the study in FY24. We will have recommendations to council in FY25. So those first 2 steps will happen within this city council's term, and then we'll plan for implementation in FY26. And that's it for compensation. Are there any questions?
Yeah, just a couple. You mentioned how part-time employees, I think the minimum went from $8.25 to $11 an hour.
Yes.
Is there any information about what was the total cost of that change? What was the impact of that? Has there been considerations for further increasing that minimum wage?
Okay. I don't think I have that total impact cost with me today. We can get that for you, and then we can certainly consider any other changes that might need to be made.
Okay. Yeah, that would be something I'd like to hear more about. And then
Sure.
I think it was an early slide that went over total compensation for 4 different job types, just as an
Yes.
example. Could you go back to that? I was just curious if you could go over a little bit more. What I think we just passed it. There we go. Just what are some of those main differences? Like I see health insurance is the same. It looks like other benefits is quite different. And then the FICA and retirement is quite different.
Sure. So it's based on the contribution is for the other benefits is based on their salary at midpoint. But law enforcement officers get a benefit that, I'm sorry, I need to look at my notes. So in terms of the retirement and FICA, the law enforcement officers, so where you see police officer at $21,000, they are receiving an employer contribution of 14.1% for elders' retirement. Their retirement is higher than the other employees. Other employees are receiving elders at 12.85%, and then the law enforcement officers also receive a special separation allowance at 8.85% per year of service after age 55. So you can see where the difference is in the FICA and retirement across the board.
And is that something we'll learn about in future sessions about kind of those differences? I don't
Sure,
know
we
how
can-
significant it is for the total budget, but just because I know that's one of our larger, items of expenses.
Sure, we'll be happy to drill down for
Okay,
that.
thank you.
And so Ms. Steed also mentioned earlier, but the 401K, that is a state mandate that we have to pay in 5% per
Yes.
law enforcement officer, and they are the only class of employees in the city that get that current benefit. So that's part of it as well. So once you tack that on with an additional higher percentage for their elders or retirement pension, and law enforcement officers are entitled to a mandated separation allowance. That is a payment that they receive until they're eligible for Social Security that we pay out each year as well after they retire.
You said that's mandatory.
I have two questions. Well, you were talking before about the entire pace, as they go through as their first rank and they can get up to senior or whatever that final thing is. Do you have a breakdown of how many people actually do that?
It's very limited because there's typically only a few deputy chiefs in the rank structure for an organization and for a city our size. So it's a promotional, they would promote through those different ranks, but it could take quite a while to get to that point.
Right. And then what happens, like I'm looking at the vacancy rate from this last year that was sent out in the manager's report. Mm-hmm. For those positions that are not filled in a fiscal year, what happens to that money? Where does it go?
I will defer to, I believe Sadia Sitar can answer that for you.
Hi, Councilmember Jones. If I hear you correctly, you were asking that if a position is vacant in our budget, what happens to it?
At the end of the year. So if you don't fill a position in the entire year, and right now, and I don't know if these are like full year positions, but if we had that number 612 vacancies,
Yes.
the entire year, where would that pot of money go in the next budget?
That is an excellent question. So when we review departments' budgets, as you recall, personnel is a massive portion of each department's budget. Included in those personnel are full-time equivalents, so those FTEs. So if you would have seen in the city manager's update, in that vacancy report, you're pointing to that 612 FTE. That is a part of the department's FTE count and therefore a part of their budget. So even if those positions are currently not filled, they are currently vacant, they are a part of their budget, and they remain to continue to be so even at the end of the fiscal year and even as we move the budget from one fiscal year to the other. So that remains that base FTE count for each department.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
But I think to further clarify, just to help answer, I think where you're trying to go with that money is called lapse salaries. So it stays within the department's budget, and that money can be used on one-time expenses. However, we do have to budget the entire FTE count because on a good day, we could hire everybody, and so we have to have that money budgeted and accounted for so that if we are at 100%, we'll have the appropriate resources to pay them. But it stays within the respective departments in terms of lapse salaries. That could help offset other expenses within that department throughout the year.
Thank you.
I have a couple. Thank you for this information first. The 30% turnover in the executive positions, do we know if that is comparable to peer cities in terms of retention issues?
We would have to benchmark with them for certain, but we continue to hear reports nationally of some high turnover in those executive type positions.
I also wondered if the city does something like a working conditions survey. When I was a teacher, there's a sort of a job satisfaction survey that was sent to employees yearly. Does something like that go out to all city employees?
It has not at this point. We do have one of our organizational excellence initiatives, which is one of the key focus areas of the strategic plan. One of the groups is working on a stay interview, and so that would serve that same purpose. It would be sending a survey out to employees at certain points of their career, asking them why they stay with the city, what they like about working for the city.
And how close is that?
How quickly we'll be ready?
Yeah.
We're hoping it'll be ready within the next few months to roll out.
Thank you.
Do you know what the delay's been in getting that done over the last couple of years?
Yes, I can tell you, it's kind of a catch-22. It's due to staffing shortages and having to be more of a reactive service rather than proactive. And
Thank you. Any other questions, counselors?
Just one more from me, sorry. The living wage calculation and the fair market rent for a one-bedroom, is there analysis on it? It strikes me that a one-bedroom only serves a certain type of employee or family structure. Was there any analysis on that selection of like a one-bedroom as the benchmark as opposed to a two-bedroom or three-bedroom?
yes, so in the calculation, there is an analysis of using the 4-year average of a one-bedroom rental within the region.
Yeah, I think the question is why one bedroom and not more?
That is a good question. So we can look at that. Mr. Patel can may be able to answer that.
No, this is approved policy of the council to consider one bedroom. So when in 2017, council had approved the whole policy, and it is as per the policy that we have to calculate the fair market rent for one bedroom apartment.
Thank you.
We good. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to Ms. Nikki Hill, Assistant City Manager.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and members of City Council. My name is Nikki Hill, Assistant City Manager. Our employees' health and well-being is important to us. It matters, and that is reflected in our rich health insurance plans. This afternoon, I will provide you with an overview of our health insurance plans, the results of a recent health benefits study that we had commenced that informed our first ever health benefits strategic plan, and what we are proposing to implement from that plan in 2024. Our health insurance is the most expensive benefit that we offer to employees and their families. We cover over 9,300 lives under our health insurance. This fiscal year alone, we have budgeted $53 million for health insurance, and of that, the city covers $45 million, and our employees cover $8 million of that cost. We are self-insured, and so what that means is those vendors that you see there on the slide, we contract with them, and they process and review our claims, and then we are responsible for paying those claims. We have 2 health insurance programs, and we have 2 dental programs. So with our health insurance, we have the Plan A buy-up plan, which offers a higher premium but lower out-of-pocket costs. And then we have the Plan B base plan, which is the lower premium and higher out-of-pocket cost. And then we also have 6 coverage tiers across those 2 plans that range from employee only to employee and family. And with our dental plans, we have 2 plans. We have the basic plan, which covers basic dental care. And then we also have the enhanced plan, which covers the basic care and also orthodontic services. So last year, we consulted with the benefits consultant to do a comprehensive evaluation of our benefits. The consultant assessed our plan design, our claims data, our rate structure, and compare that with health insurance trends, and benchmark that data against other large North Carolina local governments. Those local governments included Charlotte, Durham, Greensboro, Wake, Mecklenburg, and Winston-Salem, and we chose those because in terms of scale and number of members they cover, they are more compatible to ours as opposed to a smaller community. The findings and recommendations from that study were used to develop a multi-year health benefit strategic plan. And this is the first time that the city has had such a plan, and it will help us to look at our health benefits more holistically, stay current with trends, and better plan for future changes. The strategic plan has 3 goals, and that is to meet the diverse needs of our city employees, align benefits with best practices and trends of other employers, and provide benefits that are financially sustainable. In December of 2022, the plan was vetted and approved by our benefits committee as well as our leadership team. So I know this slide is really busy, but this just gives you a snapshot of the multi-year plan that we have. And I'm really going to focus on 2024 for the remainder of this presentation, but I did want to highlight a few areas that are noted by a star. So this year we're going to do a benefit survey. So we're going to survey all of our staff and get feedback from them on health and non-health benefits. And then we'll also get their thoughts on the things that they want the city to consider in terms of benefits. And that will help inform this multi-year plan. As we look at modernizing our plan offerings, we have to consider how we manage the cost. And so therefore, we are exploring a high deductible health plan with a health savings account or a narrow network in 2025. The high deductible health insurance plans offer lower premiums and high deductibles, coupled with the tax-advantaged personal health spending account to increase consumer accountability with healthcare spending. The narrow network is a network of healthcare providers comprised of a smaller group of local providers, and that is intended to help lower costs while maintaining benefits. We currently have one employee health clinic, and it is located in our downtown, and it primarily focuses on occupational health. And so in future years, we really want to look at on-site and near-site clinics. Those clinics provide primary care, behavioral health care, wellness exams, urgent care, chronic disease management, and they are generally placed across an entire region, so they are more accessible to the employees where they live and where they work, and they also offer care for their dependents as well. These services can better align with our wellness program to advance our efforts to create a healthier workforce and drive down high cost claims. So this slide just shows the year 2024 changes that we want to implement as a part of that health benefit strategic plan. And so I'll quickly go over those changes in the next few slides. And so under the goal of meeting the diverse needs of city employees, under our Plan A is our premium plan, it is our buy-up plan, and therefore the expectation is that it would have an enhanced plan design. So the changes that you see here on the screen are our 2024 iteration of the changes, and with a goal of future changes to continue to distinguish Plan A from Plan B and provide enhanced coverage for those participating in Plan A. And so for chiropractic, physical, and occupational therapy visits, for those under Plan A, they would increase from 30 to 40. For transgender and gender-affirming services, the maximum would go from $75,000 to $175,000. And then we also want to expand the categories of value-based drugs that we offer. So our value-based drug program offers medicines for chronic conditions at a zero cost to help keep members adherent to those medicines, to improve their health, and possibly to lower healthcare costs over the long term. And so some of those conditions are diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, blood clotting disorder, and depression. Next up, in year 2024, we want to keep our employee-only $0 premium plan. However, our employee-only plan is structured in a way that does not align with the city's financial sustainability as healthcare costs continue to increase. And so when we benchmarked against the largest cities and counties in North Carolina, we found that Raleigh and Durham were the only two that still offered a zero premium plan. However, Durham has structured their $0 plan as a narrow network or a higher out-of-pocket cost plan for their employees. So both of those structures create a cost savings for Durham, which allows them to offer these plans in a financially sustainable way. So in future years, we want to look at exploring a narrow network or a high deductible plan if we want to continue to offer a $0 plan and effectively manage the city's financial resources. Next up are changes to our wellness program. So we want to better integrate the data between our claims and our wellness program data. And so this will allow us to identify the prevalence of specific conditions amongst our employees. So we can align these conditions with the appropriate preventative screenings and incorporate more of these into our wellness program and apply a points incentive system. The more screenings an employee completes, the more points they accrue, with an opportunity to receive up to a $1,200 discount towards their health insurance premium. The current wellness program structure does not promote disease management, as employees only have to participate in an annual wellness assessment so that their premium rates don't increase. Better data integration in the point system not only benefits employees in disease prevention and better health, but it can also potentially save the city on high-cost claims if conditions are caught early. So the next goal is to align benefits with best practices and trends of other employers. In 2024, we are proposing an increase to deductible and out-of-pocket maximums. Deductible is defined as the amount a member is responsible for before the plan pays for certain services. Out-of-pocket maximums is defined as a member's total payments for deductible, co-insurance, and co-pays to the stated maximum per plan year. So once that is reached, the plan will pay 100% for eligible expenses for the rest of that plan year. So when we looked at claims data, it showed us that most of our plan participants are not hitting those current limits, and therefore it would really have a minimal impact on our employees. Also, when we looked at peer data, increasing our deductibles and out-of-pocket maximums would still keep us competitive while allowing for some cost savings for the city. And so if you look at this table, this shows the cities and the counties that we benchmarked against. And please keep in mind that this is their current data. It could change as a part of their FY24 budget development process. So in Plan B, you will see the deductibles that we're proposing to increase to would place us in the middle of the range amongst our peers. And then in Plan A, those deductible increases, they're in line with Wake County, but it's slightly higher than our benchmark peers. And this next slide shows the out-of-pocket maximums. And again, as you can see, these increases would put us in the middle of the range amongst the peers that we benchmark. Next, we plan to offer a standalone vision plan. So benchmark data showed us that most medical plans no longer offer vision benefits as a part of the plan, and so many employers offer a standalone plan. So therefore, we want to modernize our offerings and offer that standalone plan. And one of the biggest advantages to that is that that employees can enroll their dependents in a standalone vision plan without having to enroll them into our medical plan, potentially offering up some cost savings for them. And then we can also offer a base and a buy-up plan for our vision only, like we do with our medical and dental, and provide employees with greater choices. So the next enhancement involves specialty drugs. Specialty drugs account for 1.5% of our claims, but cost us 48% in terms of our overall drug cost. So if you've ever heard of Humira or Stelara, those are just some examples of specialty drugs, and they cost more for us and more for the employee. And so we're proposing to incorporate the Flex Access program into our plan design. And the Flex Access program is a Blue Cross Blue Shield program, and it is designed to allow employees to save on their specialty medicines by obtaining a copay insurance from drug manufacturers. And so currently our employees pay $50 to $100 in copay for specialty drugs, and with this plan, they would pay $25 or less in copay for specialty drugs. The next enhancement is elimination of our spousal surcharge. The spousal surcharge applies to employees who cover their spouse under our plan, yet they are eligible to receive health insurance under their employer. So none of our peers that we benchmarked against require a spousal surcharge, and this really is an antiquated way to get more spouses to elect coverage under their employer. And so with this change, applicable employees would see a $25 per paycheck savings. And since our insurance is deducted from 24 of 26 paychecks, that would represent a savings of $600 to applicable employees. And so in our final goal to provide benefits that are financially sustainable, we have two changes. Our teledoc program is a 24/7 virtual access program for doctors and therapists. And in 2024, those contract costs are increasing. And so this chart just represents the consultation fee and the split between employees and the city. And with that cost increase, we plan to maintain the current split rate of 78% city and 22% employee instead of passing on any additional cost to the employee. So the rise of healthcare costs increases about 7 to 9% each year. And since 2021, the city has absorbed these healthcare cost increases and not passed those on to employees. So for 2024, we are proposing in our multi-year health benefits plan an adjustment to employee health premiums. The adjustment is a 5% increase to medical premiums only, not dental. And as presented earlier, employee-only Plan B would remain a 0 premium. So this table just reflects what those changes would look like once that 5% is applied. And this is per paycheck. And so all these rates are based on the assumption that employees are compliant with our wellness assessment program. And so in our buy-it program, Plan A, the increase would amount to as little as $1.50 per paycheck for employee only, up to $16.50 per paycheck for employee plus family. And in the base plan, Plan B, that increase would be $2.50 per paycheck for employee and child, up to $10.50 for employee plus family. And this chart just shows how we benchmark against our peers with these increases applied. And as you can see, our premiums are less expensive or sort of the middle of the range as compared to our peers. But I do want to add the caveat again that these are our peers' current rates, and those could change as a part of their budget development process. We also offer more tiers than our peers, which provides more choices and greater affordability for our employees. You will notice that Durham overall has cheaper rates than our plan, and that's really because they have that narrow network, or they have applied an increased out-of-pocket cost in order for them to be able to offer those low rates. And so for Plan B, this shows how we benchmark against our peers if we increase those rates under Plan B. And as you can see, our premiums are either less expensive or in the middle of the range as compared to our peers. So in the past, whenever we've increased employee premiums, we sometimes hear that we essentially wipe out an employee's merit increase, and that is simply not accurate. The table reflects the impact on current employee minimum pay across each pay structure if we implemented a 5% premium increase. So to demonstrate the greatest impact an employee would see, we use the lowest salaries in our pay structures for this current fiscal year, and then we applied that merit increase that they would expect to see based on our merit guidelines. And then we applied the net increase for medical premiums to show the impact, and this is our most expensive plan. So as you can see in each example, the employee still sees an overall increase in pay. And then also keep in mind with that livable wage adjustment and the market adjustments, if those are approved in our budget, then those annual salaries will increase. And then also, this table does not reflect any of those changes that I mentioned previously in my presentation, which also amounts to cost savings for employees. And so overall, those two factors would further impact the take-home pay of employees and would lessen the impact of these increases of employee premiums. So that concludes the compensation and benefits budget presentation. Up next is completion of those pay analyses and the public safety approach that Susan mentioned. And then based on that work, we will bring back more firm proposals for council at the April budget work session. And at this time, we're open for questions or comments.
So I have a question, and you stated it towards the end, but I just want to draw a clearer picture. Where you mentioned where we normally charge for spousal, adding your spouse to your insurance, that's $600. That part is not, you're not showing that reduction of that. Are you showing that reduction of that $600 a year amount in this number?
And am I showing it in this right here?
Right.
No, it doesn't. It's not reflected. So that's a further savings for those applicable employees.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
How long will these rates last? Is this just for 1 year? Or because you have a yearly plan, is this going to be for like 2 years?
So those rates are set annually as a part of the budget process.
So these change every year, and next year will...
They may not change. It depends on, our analysis that we do with our benefits consultant and whether or not we recommend a change. And then obviously we would bring that to council as a part of the budget process, and you guys weigh in on that decision.
And that's what you're referring to. In the last few years, you haven't made the change. So
Correct.
that's why it's coming here now, so to possibly make the change.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for this. I will share a personal anecdote that I, early in my career, I worked several jobs and the cost of healthcare was astronomical. And I moved to a job that had 100% employer covered premiums, and it quite literally changed my life. So the impact of healthcare, employer provided healthcare, is not lost on me. So this is really important to me. A couple questions that I had. Do you have a breakdown of employees who purchase which plan? Like what percentage of employees purchase Plan A versus B?
Catherine is our benefits manager, and she should have that breakdown or something close to what you're asking.
So, good afternoon. For active employees on Plan A, the employee only, there's 816, and Plan B, there's 2,921. And then overall, anybody that has family coverage, the total number for family members for Plan A is 1,539, and Plan B is 6,125. So that includes spouses, the employee, any children that are covered on that plan.
Got it. So the vast majority of people engage in Plan B.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
And then you might have addressed this, but if you adopt the high deductible premium with the HSA, the high deductible plan with the HSA, would there be a city contribution to the HSA?
So that hasn't been fully scoped out. So that's a part of that multi-year plan. We would have to work with our benefits consultant to design that plan, and that would be a part of the budget process for probably next year.
Okay, got it. And then how many additional people do you think would come on to our plans once the spousal surcharge if it were removed?
I can't say. We definitely have thought about that. And what other organizations do to manage that is oftentimes they increase the rates for those who cover their spouses. So instead of charging a surcharge, they get it on the other end. They increase the premiums for anyone who is covering their spouse.
So it ends up to be roughly the same result?
Potentially, because it depends on how much they charge, and it depends on a lot of factors. I'll give you an example. It could be in a narrow network, and if it's in one of those narrow networks and they only contract with certain providers to receive medical services, they could see a cost savings there. So there's a potential to either increase rates or decrease rates for those who cover their spouses based on that plan design.
Okay.
So it doesn't automatically mean that we would increase our rates for our employees who cover their spouses in the next few years. It really depends on how we design all of this. So we have opportunity to offer savings while also mitigating increased costs for the city. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does. Thank you so much. And then my last question is just, if we ever explored, are there ever opportunities for efficiency? I know there's a critical mass, there's an element of like bulk purchasing that affects our rates. Have we ever explored aspects of joining forces with Wake County government or other types of agencies to get a cheaper rate?
I would have to ask my benefits manager. Have we ever explored that? No, we haven't.
So we have been in conversations prior to COVID about whether there could be some economies of scales if we went to plan transition to mirror Wake counties. At that moment in time, based on what they were offering and what we were offering, it was diversely different, really different for our employees. And so without a strong communication plan, we were not able to consider that at that point. And Councilmember Branch will probably remember this. There was a conversation around the whole dental program, and we did ultimately end up mirroring what Wake County is doing in our dental offerings, just not our health care.
How many providers do you guys use? Is this the same provider that we've had for a long time? Is there, if this is Blue Cross Blue Shield or if this is Aetna, do you guys ever switch, or how does that work?
So we have Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we've had them for 20, how many years? 17 years. I believe that contract is up next year, and so we have an opportunity to issue an RFP next year, and based on that assessment, we'll decide if we remain with Blue Cross Blue Shield or go with another provider.
So is that 18-year contracts that you sign with providers?
No.
Oh.
We've been with them for about 17 years, but the contracts go out for a competitive process about every 5 years.
Every 5 years. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you greatly for the presentation.
Thank you.
All right, and the last session of today's budget work session is an American Rescue Plan, affectionately known as ARPA update. So Sadia Sitar from Budget and Management Services will give us an update on our ARPA spending.
All right, well, good afternoon again, Mayor Pro Tem Branch and members of City Council, City Manager. I'm Sadia Sitar, Director of Budget and Management Services, here to provide you all with an update on the city's ARPA funding. So as a reminder, the City of Raleigh was allocated $73.2 million in direct Treasury funding. Funding must be obligated by the end of next calendar year, which is 2024, and must be spent by the end of December of 2026. Council was presented a phased approach towards ARPA spending. Final guidance on eligible uses of ARPA spending was issued by the Department of Treasury on January 6th of 2022, with final provisions or the final rule being made effective of April 1. What has the ARPA process been in the City of Raleigh? Well, to ensure effective spending of ARPA funds, the city decided to distribute funding in 3 phases. Focusing on City Council priorities, community input, and strategic plan initiatives. There was also vast internal city collaboration for possible use of funds, and city residents were also asked to provide their input on how these funds should be spent using a tool called Balancing Act. Based on all the above, the City of Raleigh identified 5 areas of funding for ARPA funds. These include economic recovery, housing homelessness, community health, transit, and infrastructure. And I just wanted to remind City Council that further details on each area and the amount of funding dedicated and currently appropriated can be found on the city's ARPA webpage at raleighnc.gov. So funding, as I mentioned earlier, was phased to address the most pressing concerns. So the initial phase, which took place in August of 2021, sought to provide immediate relief to address negative impacts caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The city provided support to agencies assisting disproportionately impacted communities. It's also provided support for small businesses, as well as hospitality support to include downtown revitalization, and also started to identify revenue loss and eligible uses of funding. Phase 2, which lasted from September of 2021 till July of 2022, also sought to align funding with identified City Council and community goals. This phase included funding for economic recovery activities, housing and homelessness, infrastructure strengthening, as well as community health initiatives. And last but not least, Phase 3, which kicked off in July 2022 and to last till December of 2024, is currently underway, as you can see, and focuses on community health, community engagement, economic recovery, infrastructure, and public safety. So I had mentioned the final rule to all of you a little while ago. Well, that actually distinguishes between eligible uses and ineligible uses of ARPA funds. This slide describes some of those eligible uses of ARPA funds, which includes revenue replacement for the provision of government services, COVID-19 expenditures of negative economic impacts of COVID-19, premium pay for essential workers, and investments in water, sewer, and other broadband infrastructure. Ineligible uses include using ARPA funds for pension costs, debt service, etc. So this is where we are now. As of February of 2023, the City of Raleigh has appropriated a total of $50.6 million in ARPA funding. Of the $50.6 million, the largest amount of ARPA funds have been spent on community health initiatives, followed by housing and homelessness, infrastructure, economic recovery, and the last but not least, for community engagement. As of now, our remaining funding is $22.6 million. I also wanted to highlight some achievements that the ARPA program in Raleigh has achieved. Well, we have funded over 90 projects. Over 78% of our awards have had a direct benefit on our community. We've also submitted all DOT reports on time, established collaborations with new partners in our community, and also worked to support and strengthen small businesses and our nonprofit community around the city. So our next steps are that we will continue to update the city's ARPA webpage. You'll see here shortly in a few days the updated number with this $22.6 million that I provided earlier. Our goal is to continue to provide real-time and user-friendly information. We've also just concluded the RFP process for the second part of the community health initiatives, and we hope to share information about future awardees with City Council at a March City Council session, so just next month. And then in the spring of this year, we intend to host a technical assistant training for our nonprofit and small business development partners across the city so that they are clear about how to apply for ARPA funds and provide them as much guidance as possible in completing those applications. So that was a really short and sweet presentation on ARPA, and with that, I'm going to open the floor to any questions.
Any questions?
So we have $22.6 million left in the ARPA funding. Has that money already been allocated for projects, or is it just like what's left based around the community health, community engagement, economic recovery, infrastructure, and public safety spectrum?
So that is the pot of funds that are currently left. So these funds have not been appropriated as of yet, Councilmember Black. The city, as you're aware, we have determined a phased approach. In those phased approach, we identified certain initiatives to fund at various timeframes. So these are the current amounts that you have seen on this slide are the budget that is the budget that has currently been appropriated for these initiatives, and which totals $50.6 million. So yes. You have 22.6 left.
What exactly would be the process of allocating the remaining dollars towards other projects?
So I can step in here because in the end it will come down to the council in deciding that. I think in our conversations that we've had, we've talked about looking at affordable housing, looking at some other project, something that can help our community. So I think with that being said, it's kind of where it is right now. But as she said, there's a phased approach and trying to get the things that we've already put out there kind of moved and going, so we'll make sure we're being good stewards of the money that we've already spent. So we have luckily until the end really of next year, but I have a feeling we'll probably figure something out way before then.
Awesome. I think that brings me to my real question. Is there capacity to do community participation in the ARPA funding projects? That's really what my question was.
So when you speak to community participation, are you speaking to having the City of Raleigh residents communicate what they would like to see in ARPA spending? Actually, if you go to the ARPA webpage on www.raleighnc.gov, you will see that our interactive tool is still live.
Well, it's for all of it.
Yes.
West
still
somehow
live.
would like us to spend all the money. Go ahead, I'll let the city manager
So
explain
when
it.
we embarked upon this newfound money, understanding that it was a lot of money, it was money that we had never been granted before and probably money that we'll never ever get again. We were intentional about staging a process where there was community input and feedback in that process so that it wouldn't be all of staff's recommendations, nor would it be all of the elected officials' recommendations. So we put the tool online to gauge public input. So what we heard pretty much from those three different entities is what we funded thus far. Community health initiatives, small business support, technical assistance, infrastructure needs. Those are the things that came out of those conversations through the tool meetings that we held, as well as community meetings.
And that was when the fund originally opened up. Has there been any like circling back on that stuff or?
Well, it is an active tool, and I would assume that staff continues to.
Yes.
Yes.
That is a great question. So that is absolutely true. We do, like I said, we continue to update our webpage. The tool is currently active. We have these 5 big pots of money that City of Raleigh residents have identified as being those key areas where they would like to see ARPA funding being spent on. But as we go through each and every phase, we do have a city council and community collaborative process.
Yes. And so each funding decision for each of those buckets, we put out a process. Organizations apply, then those organizations' applications are vetted, and then staff brings back a recommendation to council, and council approves how much and which agencies are funded. So it is very collaborative and very transparent by design.
Do we have any data or data on how many people have participated in that survey? How many residents? I didn't realize it, so I have not participated. So I'm just wondering, is that door still open?
Councilmember Jones, we actually do have that information, and we'd be happy to bring it back for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have just one this time. I was recently made aware, is less of a question, more of something I'm hoping you can just daylight for the rest of us and the viewers at home. I was recently made aware that some of this money has requirements for, it's not as easy as just maybe handing over checks to people for rental assistance or for support for their small business, and there has to be like another component of it. So that's why in the Oak City Biz Labs, there had to be like a training component for the small businesses to kind of access that resource and that money. Can you speak to that a little bit, like the requirements?
So from my understanding, there are evaluation criteria for when we receive the funding. Now, for an organization to receive the funding, because the Department of Treasury has such specific eligible uses for the funding, it behooves the city to then provide us with that organization, with the training and the assistance to ensure that they are spending those funds according to DOT standards and guidelines. So that is why we plan to host this spring training. And just so that I understand what you're asking, you mentioned Oak City. Can you please repeat that?
I think I know what you're asking. I think that in order to be able to use any of the money, there are federal regulations and rules that we have got to follow requiring documentation, almost like proving that we're using it in a proper way, giving it to the proper entities, we're following the rules to disperse it. And if we don't do that, and that they came back for an audit later, we would be in trouble. It's like, you just don't give somebody a bunch of money without finding out if they really used it. Otherwise, I could give some to Corey and I could give some to Marshall. And so we have to cross every T and dot every I.
No.
You know what I mean? It's they're giving us the money for a specific purpose, and we've got to be able to document that we spend it in the right way. And I think I will just say, because I think some people do get frustrated with that, but we don't really have a choice in following those rules.
Thank you, City Attorney. And Councilmember Patton, one of the ways in which we ensure that folks are spending these funds accurately is that through ARPA funding, the city has actually gotten 2 FTE, one in finance and one in budget, and those 2 individuals actually monitor all of these over 90 ARPA projects that we've so far dispersed in the community to ensure that those funds are being used applicably.
Any other questions? If not, thank you for that update and for that information. Thank you all, city managers. Anything else?
No, I'd just like to say this is the first of many budget work sessions. So if you're confused now, just imagine how confused we are when we start this process. But again, this is hopefully helpful information for you to kind of understand how we build the budget on an annual basis. And some of the things we have some discretion in, but most of them we don't. They're either state mandates or requirements as part of ordinances, codes, or policies that the city has. And again, this one, we always bring this one forward first because it is the one that speaks most directly to our employees. And so that gives us an opportunity to hear what you all say over the next couple of months about fees for some of our other services, so that when we come back in May with the balanced budget, it will incorporate all of those conversations over a 4 or 5 month period.
Thank you. Madam Attorney, you have anything?
No.
All right. No, there was no surprises today. I just
I can
asked.
live through another report.
All right. With that said, we are adjourned.
All righty.
Yeah, it's up there.